Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Marketing Roundtable. My name is Tatiana Kinney-Smith, and I work in design.
I'm Rachel Rhodes, and I work in organic social media. And today, our guest is Project Manager Rose, coming down from Canada. Not technically for this, but we do appreciate them coming in for the podcast.
Very much.
Please introduce yourself, Rose.
Thank you. My name is Rose Baez, and I am a project manager at BrainDo. I work with almost all disciplines besides development, and I'm very excited to be here today and talk about the topic that we have at hand.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So today for our topic, we are actually diving into event marketing, which is kind of a sub-discipline maybe. And so just jumping into it, how does event marketing, an event marketing campaign, like perhaps for a conference, differ from a regular marketing campaign?
Right. So with our regular marketing campaigns, we typically have a brand or a product or a service line that we're trying to market, and that will usually span over a longer period of time. These contracts are usually on an annual basis, and they often extend. There are various strategies that are employed, but it is a product, service, or brand that will exist past the expiration date of the campaign. Versus with event marketing, we're talking about something that is contracted in time. But once the event happens, there's not too much that we do. There are some strategies that we employ after a conference is completed to kind of maybe queue up the next year's version if that is if that's happening, if it's not a one-off. But for the most part, it has an expiration date, and it's a lot more fast-paced.
Yeah. You have a more specific mission, it seems like.
Right.
Yeah.
You're also speaking to a very niched sub-audience of your client, whether that be, an organization that serves a cause, or a publication, or a compilation of different organizations within an industry that are putting together the event. It's usually for a niched audience, so you really get to be specific and also help grow that relationship between your client and the audience for that given event.
Right.
Yeah, it's more dynamic than just like a purchase.
Yes, it's a lot more dynamic. There are a lot more pieces to it and a lot more considerations.
Yeah, for sure. And I know just talking to you earlier, you mentioned like there's so much more pivoting because like the time frame is so condensed that like you need to be able to move faster and like be able to pivot again, as you said. That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Right. Because like, you don't have as much time.
Right. If something's not working, I mean, it's like when you're speaking at a live engagement, like an event, but like if what you're doing isn't working and it's not resonating with the audience, you just have to pivot and go with what's going to work for them. And it's the same thing. Like, but yeah, with the sales thing, it might be a little more like, like next quarter we can revamp the pitch or the messaging. And it's like, no, this is like hard deadline. We have to fill those seats or tickets or whatever it be.
And there is a lot of meticulous project management that goes into these event marketing campaigns. But stick around till later in the video because that is our third section, more towards the end, and we'll have things timestamped if you're on YouTube down below. So stick around for that. We will definitely dive deeper into the details of project management for event marketing.
Yes, but before we get to that, we just want to bring it back to the beginning. So as an agency, we provide a range of services from full comprehensive plans to a more consultative approach. Can you speak more about that?
Right. With events marketing, we take one or two approaches. So we either comprehensively take on a project. So we're involved from the ideation of the event branding all the way through the final reporting rounds and the kind of post-mortem additional flights, if that is part of our strategy. And in those engagements, it's really fun for a team because we all get to kind of come together from all of our various disciplines and truly collaborate on making it a great initiative. So we'll see things like paid media working with organic search engine optimization, organic social, ensuring that there is kind of linguistic coherence between the different disciplines, also visually from a design standpoint. UX standpoint as well, if we're able to develop a specific landing page. It's a really great exercise too with the client team, because we need to understand not only the event itself, but the brand, and ensure that brand voice is being carried through from the parent organization or group all the way down to, a single ad that we'll make. So our design team is wonderful at making sure that there is that kind of coherence there. And from there too, development comes into play if we are asked to develop web assets, and analytics and data science are pivotal for us as well.
Yes.
That word,
we're data driven.
Yeah.
Right. Continue to show up. And we always ensure that all of the engagements that include any sort of media are backed by very solid reporting and understanding of how all of the various channels are performing together, and that also allows us to be quick at pivoting, which is what we've been talking about a lot today. You're talking about a campaign which also has multiple facets to it, because there are so many events out there. And so one of the things that we do is to ensure that our audiences know what to expect at the event. So you'll have your overall campaign, but then you'll also have kind of smaller initiatives within the greater umbrella of the event marketing, which touch on the specifics, and any kind of components might be modified at any time depending on what we see in the data.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I guess, like a pro of being able to take on a campaign as a comprehensive approach. Like, we're all slacking each other all the time, every day. Like, communication just runs faster when you're working within a team. But that's not to say that we don't collaborate with the client. Obviously, we still have like calls with them. We're still checking in if they have like a big design change that needs to happen. Like, they'll communicate that to us. So we're still collaborating with the client.
Like a comprehensive, or like someone might say like a holistic approach. Like we're unifying across all departments to provide an ultimate kind of product or end goal. Whereas, the consultative approach, if you want to explain that one some.
Right, for sure. So if I had to compare them metaphorically, I would say that the comprehensive engagements feel like playing an instrument or like playing an orchestra, versus the consultative approach, which just feels like picking up the phone. Because you're really responding to the client's need. It usually stems from a gap in client's bandwidth or capability. And sometimes, you're being asked to step in for another engagement that fell through, or you're asked to step in for a channel that hasn't been considered, but we're seeing declines year over year, and we're trying to get creative with how to ensure that the event is going to be successful. So that's where we really get to shine when it comes to problem solving and coming up with these very custom programs for our clients that directly respond to exactly what they need. And of course, we provide consultations, and we try to ensure that our teams are still involved, even peripherally, and we're able to, even so far as to say with paid media, let's say we are just asked to run a paid media campaign, we're also going to ask our SEO team and our organic social team to advise, and that's going to be in a limited capacity, but we still want to make sure that we are just servicing the client to the best of our shared capabilities.
Now, in this role that's more so just providing support wherever the client may need it, I understand there could be like specific challenges that arise with that, because we want to be there to support them, but when we don't have like full control over something, it can get complicated. So what are some of these challenges with a more like consultative support?
Right. Very often it stems from, again, something that happens that wasn't necessarily planned for by the client. And so you're integrating yourself into a work stream that went through a lengthy preparation, ideation, phases on the client side beforehand that you weren't privy to. There is going to be information gaps. There's going to be a need for more integration within the teams. So this is when we can't really afford to be siloed. We need to make sure that we are allowing as much access to us for the client team as we can through our communication channels and through our project management softwares, and to ensuring that our processes are streamlined and easy to understand and navigate as possible, so that we are not creating overhead time when it comes to approvals, etc.
Yeah. We always like to consider ourselves like an extension of your team versus like a separate team who's coming in. We like that.
And I like you bringing up like the fact that there was a whole ideation stage that happened before we arrive, because there is like a whole history and context that we might not be seeing all the time.
Yeah.
We're trying to do a crash course as opposed to actually study for the exam.
Right. I like that. That's a good way to look at it. But we can also bring together like the strengths of the two teams. Like as you mentioned, like we're there to fill in the gaps and provide support where like bandwidth might be missing. The client obviously knows what their like goals are and like their brand strengths, and then we can come in to support with the rest.
Right.
We've been using the word like events a lot, which is very broad, but also, you know, we're not like putting ourselves in a box, like we only do one thing. But like what are some like examples of events that you're talking about when we're using the term event, like for event marketing?
Great question. A lot of those events are industry events and conferences and such. There are also many events that focus around specific award ceremonies, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Speaker engagements, things like that.
Okay.
And this is separate from experiential marketing, where like you might set up like a booth to have like give people an experience.
Very
it's experiential,
Right.
Just in case anyone was like, it sounds like this other thing. They are like separate.
Correct. Very rooted in the digital space. Although we have had examples with our clients when we would do something very small, kind of to add to what we were already doing, to promote their presence at an event. Which is very different, because we're not doing all that. We're just saying this organization is going to be at this event, bringing this offering to the attendees.
Yeah. So I know we have helped a client with a event that they had. It was a more consultative approach, and they do need to stay anonymous. It's a little white labeled, blinded study, but we would like to talk about it. So like, what was the story? How and why did this particular client come to us?
Right. So they were having challenges with staffing at the vendor side of the project, as they were in between agencies at that moment. And so we came in to consult and to fill in the gaps where necessary. It was an interesting situation because it was quite last minute and all the media was already in market. So we had a schedule for various additional flights and refreshes, etc.
And by flights, you mean like paid media campaign releases? Yeah.
Correct. Yes. We completely lacked background, and there were a lot of gaps in asset delivery, etc., because there was not that phase where we were able to set up workflow, which I think is really important. So there were a lot of challenges, but it was overall a really interesting case study and a very fun project to work on, because we were able to collaborate with the clients to create these solutions and to kind of make the best of what we had available to us. And it was also interesting to try and integrate the client almost as part of our team from a more technical project management standpoint. They were able to contact us via Slack. They were fully integrated into our ClickUp organization, which is our project management system, in a specific workspace that was created for them. And then we pivoted too with that. At some point, it wasn't the ideal solution for everybody on the client side. So we used a tool that was completely new to our team, but that the client team was comfortable with.
Right.
Because it also depends on which side of things is currently struggling to catch up. It's going to be a different side of the team depending on the part of the project that we're in. And it's really great to be able to pivot workflows and processes as needed as well.
Yeah, I totally just got a mental image of like a train getting a little shaky and they're like about to run off the rails. Like you don't want to actually take the train and put it on new rails. You want them to stay on the same rails and just make sure that it's smooth and it's not actually going to crash.
Exactly.
So I actually didn't know that we switched softwares to something that they were more comfortable with. I think that's a huge point. Like we can't just come in and strong arm and be like, we do things this way actually, so you need to as well. Like we are there to support these people.
Yeah, I do think it's really important to establish that very open line of communication between the points of contact on each side. So me stepping into the role of the account person for these projects, I always want to make sure that I'm offering the client every opportunity to even have daily touch points, even if it's for 10 minutes, if the project hits in its highest kind of volume at that moment, and it's just helpful to realign and to make sure we have that transparency, and also for the client to feel comfortable to say, hey, this and this is not fully working for us. Because sometimes, something is really working for us, but we need that from the client, the feedback from the client, in order to be able to further cater to their needs and pivot towards them.
Yeah. And what services did we end up providing them?
Oh, it's one of those great opportunities where we were able to engage all of our disciplines in some capacity. So we were focusing on media, and that's the most common part of these sorts of engagements. But we were able to bring value with other disciplines, which worked together with media and ensure that the deliverables between the different disciplines complement each other and inform each other, which I think is always really cool, where design can inform media, but also can inform the web team on the client side. And then SEO can inform the kind of language that we use in our media engagements and then media campaigns in general.
Now, in this case, did we start with, okay, you definitely want/need paid media and SEO, or did we start with one and just kind of add as their needs arose?
So we actually iterated on the initial strategy for the scope of the engagement. So we signed 2 contracts. I think another strength is kind of being able to do that very quickly, turn these engagements around if they're needed. But we started with a more conservative approach to the program.
Sure.
And then when we noticed certain results and spoke about other ways to improve, we expanded the engagement further to other disciplines.
Yeah. Nice. Talking about that pivoting, met, touch base, said, hey, we want to, produce different results, and this is how we're going to get there. Right. And you made it happen.
How long was this engagement?
Yeah.
Time frame, good question. I think it was around a quarter.
A quarter? Okay.
Okay, so 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Project terms.
And then what was the post-mortem like? How long was that? The reporting we may have provided, etc.
That would be within a month.
Okay.
We want to make sure that the client receives a full comprehensive report that talks about how all the channels worked individually and together, together with the learnings and other tips and recommendations for any future iterations of the event. And 2, a lot of events do like to have at least a paid search campaign live after the event is completed for a week or 2, kind of signaling to be on the lookout for the next year's offering. For those who might still be looking at content from the conference.
Yeah. Like you just said, content for the conference. I'm sure that is a major thing that they're then, pushing out as a result of.
Right. So I was reading an article about this new position that people hire when it's a wedding day content specialist.
I've seen that,
yes.
Yeah.
As somebody who closely follows Bachelor Nation people, they all have content specialists.
But it's not, events don't do that.
I mean, that's something on a much, smaller scale to, bring it down to something we always do whenever we're having an event, whether it be a team event of some sort. We're always Rachel and I will plan content for it. What are we gonna provide from it afterwards? What kind of reels do we want to make? Are we gonna make anything that's video or photo based, and make sure that we're planning for that on the outside end. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense that if you're having any sort of event, especially on a much larger scale with speakers, a conference, that either inviting a lot of content creators and having some sort of agreement about sharing imagery and things like that, or content, maybe, or starting a hashtag, all sorts of things you could do, or hiring creators specifically to make content. It just makes a lot of sense.
Well, to me, it goes even a step further, because that's actually a gap that I've noticed with events where we try to leverage content from previous years. And that just does not happen because the client doesn't have content that is good enough to be used as digital assets. And
yes, there's never enough content.
And on top of that, when they work with influencers, or if an influencer was present, those rules are very gray. And companies will always try to err on the side of caution. And so for them, it is easier to just say, create subpar assets without the actual footage from the event, rather than risk there be a legal liability. So having a designated person who is hired to capture that content by that company, who then owns the content, would be a massive deal to future marketing campaigns.
Yes. We actually brought this up in my podcast episode about social media. There's like social media managers, content creators, and they can be like totally separate. Like there are content creators that just make UGC, which is user-generated content. They don't care about having their own followers so much. Like that's the service they sell. Like I will take good natural pictures of myself using or engaging with your product for you to use on your site. And that's the entire thing. I'm not trying to gain a follower from this. I'm not trying to get a sponsorship. Like that's what I do. Right. And this is officially a dedicated role you can have at an agency. I've seen it. Agencies will hire content creators to help with their social media content, with a client's social media content. So yes, you don't need an influencer per se to be at your event. You just hire a professional who knows, I show up, I do photography, I'm given like maybe a shot list, and I provide the content. It is very separate from being an influencer too. And I agree. There's more content. Let's capture more content at these events.
You can never have too much content. Like, if you have too much, no one's ever like, oh, that's too much. But when you have too little, like, everyone notices it. You're like, oh, man, I don't have what I need.
Especially if there's a major shift from, like, a conference from last year to this year. Like, you've added something new. Or, like, how do you promote that when you only have last year's content?
Yeah. And I mean, there is obviously, I feel like when we're having that conversation too, like obviously if the event hasn't happened yet, you're not going to have the content from that new event. So you have to, work around it. But you're going to want it, obviously, to attract people for next year or as like, for your social, your website, XYZ, like it's just great authority building, like thought leadership stuff. Why would you not like?
There could also be like a little PR tour element, like going on someone else's podcast and talking up the event and then being able to use that for content.
I mean, there's also an element of just human psychology. For the most part, these are industry events, and professionals who work in the industry stay in the industry for usually a long period of time. And so the idea is that you would have returning attendees year after year. And so seeing images from a conference you attended is a very different route to signing up for the next one. It's seeing images from, a place you've never been to in a professional setting.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have so many ideas for whenever we get our next event marketing situation. Thanks for bringing those up.
This podcast is powered by BrainDo, a digital marketing agency that not only provides a diverse mix of digital services, but offers guidance, experience, and true partnership to bring your business to the next level.
This episode was all about event marketing and project management, but we also offer expertise in a variety of services like data, analytics, web design services, UX, social media,
content creation.
Yes, the list goes on. So, we worked with businesses on every level from local operations to Fortune 500 companies across a variety of industries.
We have experts to help strategize and execute your digital marketing needs no matter what step in the process you're at. From wireframes to paid campaigns, we're there for you.
BrainDo, experts in everything digital. Reach out today to learn more about how we can help your business grow. So, like we've teased and promised twice already, we have arrived at the project management section of the episode where we dive into more specifically like what you do as a project manager for event marketing campaigns. So, Rose, what was it like to PM this engagement with so many variables and moving pieces? What are some tips or observations you can give us?
Right. I think it starts at the kind of pre-project phase. before I even have the first conversation with the team about the project, I make sure that I am understanding every facet of the event and as much of the brand as possible, depending on the time I have available to me. In the perfect world, I love to create a write-up of all the facts that are crucial, almost like the crash course that I was describing earlier, like having that written out,
Right.
what the engagement entails, include links for the team, just so we can prep for the initial kind of kickoff conversation, and that everybody has a foundational knowledge about each of the aspects of the engagement.
Right.
And from there, documentation is key. I feel like the more intense the project, the more important the documentation, and it's never a waste of time, even when sometimes it feels like it when you're creating a piece of documentation, because you could be working on a deliverable or answering emails, but in reality it will save you time.
That's another thing. I'm like, there's never enough content. There's never enough internal documentation.
Yep.
Like, more documentation.
Yeah,
So
right.
important.
And just to define like documentation, like notes, things written, everything is just written down. Yeah.
Especially because you are juggling so many different details, and you want to make sure that from a project management perspective, you want to make sure that your subject matter experts can focus on doing their job, using their expertise to create something really great, as opposed to keeping mental notes of a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So, things like timelines, establishing clear milestones, working with teams to create benchmarks, which I think is also crucial in these engagements on a consultative level, because we're keeping expectations very realistic. We're making sure that there is transparency and that honesty in what we do. And that, if the client sees certain benchmarks and they're not fully happy with them, wonderful, let's have a conversation and see what we can change to get closer to what they need, and explain kind of where these numbers came from. And then, integrating the project management software, ensuring everybody understands where things are and how they should be progressing, and creating these avenues of approvals with the client, understanding their process, establishing these lines of communications, scheduling calls that go on a regular basis at the very, very least. And then just making sure that we know when certain things will be validated, checked, insights will be discussed between the different teams, how we're going to manage all of that.
Yeah. So it seems like a really big piece of it is flow. Like, your job is to make sure that the subject matter experts, everyone else, like, has the flow, and we're ready to just move when we're ready to move.
You're like building the structure for everything to kind of work on top of.
It's an orchestra. It's conducting an orchestra, and it's lovely. And I think it also requires a level of humility, because on projects that are for a brand or a product or service, like we discussed earlier, things kind of can live in your head, and you don't have to rely so much on different exercises. But with these volatile projects with so many moving pieces, going through an exercise of, for example, just mapping everything out, like sitting down with yourself, either with a tool that does flowcharts or with a spreadsheet, that will take longer, but it works, and mapping out how long each team will take to develop what, and when these checkpoints can occur, and how are these hours going to be utilized in the time. Having that understanding, the team doesn't necessarily need to even digest that information, but you're creating these guardrails. You see something very black and white. Is this going to work, or do we need to talk about how to make it work?
And this is more so not like a personal question, but do you find that you like to mind map or organize your thoughts in a specific way?
It could be something like Miro or Figma.
Miro?
Or Miro. I feel like
What is that?
I can never pronounce it correctly. It's a flowcharting.
Okay. Flowchart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or just spreadsheets. It just really depends on how many components
love
I
a
have.
spreadsheet here.
Right?
We're always looking at a spreadsheet.
I think it's because we're data driven.
How do you break down a project into components?
Well, first we start with departments, and then we look at kind of results that we're trying to obtain, and then we will likely have different deliverables or work streams already outlined in our scope. So then you look at the deliverables / work streams and what goes into them, and you just write them all down. For us, as most of our engagements are on a time material basis, it's also the exercise of looking at how the hours for the given contract are going to be spread out between the different deliverables, allowing time for collaboration with the client, brainstorming session, etc. So it's really just understanding each little element, each the kind of Lego block that goes into the house.
As like not a PM, I am always also someone who can't do math. I'm grateful when you can like show me a scope and I'm like, how did you get this number? Which one of my harvest tasks did you pull this? Thank you for the context. Okay, looks good.
Yeah, when you're breaking things down, you're talking about like a project and then breaking it into components. Are those, and this could change based off the project, but are those components based off the like tasks or the deliverables or like the person executing them?
A mix of all of that.
Okay.
It's really fun because I think your brain adapts to so many things you do in your life. Like, I feel like if you've had the same clothes in your closet for a long time and you're going to an event, your brain can kind of put together an outfit. But if you just like replace your closet or you just went thrifting and went to town, like that's going to be more difficult to do. And it's kind of the same with hours. There are different work streams or projects or deliverables that I can kind of tell you exactly how long that's going to take for a given client or the size of the given client. And then other ways, we collaborate with the subject matter experts. We've done it together where we just kind of go through what goes into a given task or deliverable, and we assign the number to it. It is a time materials contract. We make sure that we don't go over our estimates, but at the same time communicate with the clients and align on the scope changes if those are necessary, if the requirements change, for example, and just keep iterating and gathering data, because while we already have so much data on how long things take, and these estimates are, I would say, very data-driven at this point, we also work in an industry that's always changing, and it will always be changing, and our deliverables will continue to evolve, work streams will continue to evolve, there will be new channels and new teams and whatnot. So there is a muscle, and then there is a record in your head.
Yeah, I'm like, just obviously from my point of view working in social, like things are constantly being updated and changing, and you can be used to doing something a million times, but then like this one little thing tweaks and you're like, how do we reflect this in like documentation even, or right. Digital marketing is constantly evolving. So we've mentioned ClickUp. We use ClickUp. How would you integrate a client into softwares that we use? And I know we have had clients like on Slack in the past too. Love Slack. Shout outs.
ClickUp is a fantastic tool to collaborate with clients in, because you can create a workspace that's just designated for them, so you're never compromising any information. But at the same time, especially in the perfect world, if the client uses ClickUp, it will just show up as another space for them.
Nice.
Otherwise, clients are very open to that, because in a card, you can not only communicate as if you were communicating in an email thread, and all of the communication pertaining to a specific asset or a specific deliverable is in one place. They can check on the status in real time. The guest seats are very generous. The number of the guest seats is very generous for ClickUp. So you can integrate, your client team very easily, especially for these events marketing campaigns. And they can approve directly in your project management system whenever they are able to, without creating bottlenecks. Also emails, even though the way we work has been shifting so much, emails still remain something that has a structure. Emails, they contain an introduction, something nice to say in the beginning, because, we don't want to be corporate robots here. We're human, so we want to maintain our humanity in there. Before we dive into the actual question, like, we've written words, and then we need to close out the email. So you'll have to go through the decision-making process of what sign-off are you using, and then it's like a more formal thing that gets sent out that people spend more time thinking about. Versus if we're integrated on a project management software level, people can write the same content, the same feedback, or the same questions in a way that's quick, informal, it's there. We know why we are on this board together is because there is a necessity for this kind of integrated team, kind of blended team collaboration, and it just works.
Right, yeah. When you're working like that closely with people, like so quickly on like a quick question base, it just makes sense that it would become like more casual and natural. And I mean, also a great benefit to it is like, I mean, ClickUp has an inbox where you can go look to your messages, but a lot of the times you'll be kind of surfacing, you know, your check-ins will be surfacing through your like boards and calendars. So, unlike a email inbox where the deliverable is sent and then just goes lower and lower and lower and lower and lower, that deliverable will still be like right at the top of the card.
Right, and then you forward a change to someone. The deliverables are now gone. Someone has to email you, let you know, hey,
Yeah, that's the worst.
someone gets dropped off. Yeah, it's just, we want to keep it as easy and clean as possible.
Yeah. I do agree. Like, emails are somehow much more formal.
Right.
Like, I will spend so much time rereading an email.
Right.
And not nearly as much time rereading, like, an update in ClickUp.
Yeah, and there's a time and a place for that. Sometimes
definitely.
It's wonderful to have an email sent out. Like, I would never deliver a report on ClickUp. I want the report to be emailed out. I want it to live as something that the client can reference back later on. It lives in email. There's also an element to project managing these sorts of engagement that has to do with physically how you manage the team's workflow. And what I mean by that is, I think we spend more time in these virtual rooms, and I think this is by byproduct of how the way we work changed over the last few years when we're not in the office all together all the time. As you mentioned in the beginning, I'm in Toronto a lot, and so one way to improve efficiency in many places and just make everybody more comfortable is just having a Zoom room open, and then the team can jump in, ask questions. Sometimes it's just multiple people working together, and you know, you can be on mute, you don't have to be on camera if we're not actively brainstorming and collaborating, but we're still sort of there to unmute, ask a question, and it doesn't have to be, again, we're cutting down, contracting these communication channels, and it's not a Slack of, hey, can you hop on Huddle with me? Okay, let's also bring in this person. Like, we're already in a little room, and we're working that way for, you know, however long in a day.
Last night, Todd and I were brainstorming something on a Huddle, and I did accidentally mute my mic at one point, but there were multiple times where we were, like, silent for minutes, and then we were like, hello, are you still there? Like, we're both working, but, like, we forgot.
Yeah, because, right, you didn't mute, or maybe you did also mute your mic, but you muted your computer. So I was trying to talk to you, and you weren't responding, and then I was like, are you there? And then, yeah, I just, like, doubt was cast for the rest of that battle.
Because I was quiet, like, thinking and working.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah. But it is nice to be, like, on a brainstorm like that, too.
Yeah.
When you're ready to just say something out loud and have someone respond, they're there.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you so much, Rose, for joining us on the Marketing Roundtable podcast to talk more about event marketing.
Thank you so much for having me. And for anybody listening who might have needs in the realm of events marketing, either consultative or comprehensive,
Yes.
Reach out to BrainDo and let's see how we can collaborate.
Yeah. You can also find us on social media at brain.do. Check out Instagram and LinkedIn. We also have a workplace comedy account, Not Your Average Marketer, that you can check out on Instagram. Our website is brain.do. And we will see you next time at
The Roundtable.